Let's turn on some mics. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Torn Tuesday, your weekly dose of all things Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, fantasy, whatever we want to talk about. I am joined below by our regular host and co-host, Cliff Broadway, and our special guest, that way, Sebastian A. Jones, the founder, CEO, head guy of Stranger Comics, and the creator of the world of Asunda, which has been optioned for a huge budgeted fantasy TV series, something that we're very familiar with at this point. So, welcome to the show, Seb.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me again. I love you guys. It's great to be here. Great to be
Absolutely
here.
a pleasure to have you back, good sir. And it could not be a finer way to send out this year than to follow up with you, our good friend. It's good to see you. Welcome back.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Love hanging out with you guys. It's just a shame we can't embrace in person and kick back some eggnog and kegnog and have some tea, have some PG tips.
Amen. Yeah. Soon enough. Well, my sister is a frontline worker and she is getting her vaccine next week. So it's really happening. And
my sister as well is also a pediatric nurse. And, she's been taking care of all the littlest, tiny little babies. Lucky for her, she's also going to be able to be like Justin's sister,
Right.
be able to get her vaccine very soon.
Oh, wow. Well, thanks to the sisters,
And the weird thing is my sister's name is Tiffany and his sister name is Tiffany.
Get out
Wow.
of here.
So I don't want any more connections with Cliff. I have to deal with him enough on this show. So no, I'm just kidding. Hey, I'm looking at the chat room. We've got everybody from Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, Periscope. Thank you for joining us. RJ McReady says, Sebastian, how are you, dear boy? May Eru be with you.
Oh, it's very sweet. May Eru be with you too. I love that.
Well, let's just jump into conversation. We've spoken many times. You've been a regular guest on the show. You did graphic novels, and they were hugely successful. I've seen huge crowds around your Comic-Con booth for years, and you were one of just the best exhibitors at every convention. And then you parlayed that into a TV deal with HBO,
Very well. Look at that. My goodness, the Untamed. What? How did you get your hands on that, Cliff? Tell everybody.
Let me risk a little more light. This is my Gandalf staff over the book cover.
Is that the hand of the devil you're holding? Is that the hand of the devil holding the hero in the Untamed?
Is that the book with Sean Bean?
Yes.
Yeah, that's when we had the option deal back in the days with Film Roman, and we did that little animation piece with him. We brought him back from the dead for a quick second, and then kill him off again. Because that's how it should be. But no,
this hardcover has all these great sketches and other characters here in the back.
Wait, does that mean you're the first franchise to bring Sean Bean back from the dead?
Maybe so. I don't know. I think there's probably some folks out there that are more what are they called? Beanophiles, or that sounds actually slightly suspect. I don't know. Is there another word for like bean fans, beaners or something?
Yeah, what do Sean Bean fans call themselves besides depressed all the time? Like he's always dying. RJ McGrady says, wait, Boromir died? Wait, spoilers. If you haven't seen the movies and read the books or seen any movie that he's been in, I'm sorry. That's just normal.
There's a book? I hear there's a movie. There's a book too. I gotta put that on my Amazon list.
Hey, that brings us up to our first topic. Now, you're right in the middle of what Lord of the Rings fans are dealing with. We got a big TV series going on, and the Lord of the Rings fans have always been split between fans that love the Hobbit movies, love the Lord of the Rings movies, and come into the stories through film, right? And then there's book lovers who like focus on every single detail that the movies got wrong compared to the book.
Right.
Do you see that stratification happening in other forms? Like you're coming from graphic novels, right? As a creator, do you expect that fandom will grow but splinter in such a way?
Yeah, I think it's just the nature of the beast is that TV and film have a much wider outreach, and it is the current medium where folks and obviously social media and these types of things where folks get their facts and their fiction, and before you potentially read the Bible, you've seen Exodus and think Moses was a bloke who looks and sounds like Christian Bale. Do you know what I'm saying? Like whereas
Russell Crowe, right? He was played by Russell Crowe.
Russell Crowe is, I think, Noah.
Oh yeah, that's right. Not Moses.
I don't know. I'm not so sure about that. Like Russell Crowe. Yeah. So I think you kind of take it. You take it with a grain of salt to some degree, and then you kind of fight the battles you want to fight. But I think when it's a case of, look, representation is, to me, like if you've got essentially where biblical events take place, then you can act accordingly and represent the most authentically you can.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when it comes to understanding you're taking one medium into another medium, unless it's a passage, how long does it take a regular reader to read, let's say, Fellowship from start to finish? It's going to be more than 3.5 hours. So then what are you going to essentially kind of cherry pick your the most distilled, the most beautiful and best represented way to tell the story and get the story across within the scope that a cinema will allow you to have that time in the cinema and then so on. Whereas we're dealing with the opposite, where we might have this beautiful Untameby type comic, or another plug, our new one, like with Dura and Niobe. What? Amazing.
Oh my gosh.
You've got 24 pages for one issue. And if that 24 pages in one issue is, let's say, approximately 15 pages of script writing, but the episode would be an hour, you've then got to come up, with more material to fill in the other pieces of the puzzle within that medium. So I think there's coming back, so I think it depends on the medium, right?
Mm-hmm.
But coming back to the other question is, another part of it is, when it comes to Lord of the Rings, I think it is such borderline, if not a feel of religious identity and cultural identity for someone when they read it, that it becomes a part of their own makeup and their own identity as a person, that everything is very becomes a very personal moment in time when someone reads something that changes the course of their entire life. It becomes a sense of another extension, another limb, another spiritual limb, if you will. So when they see it, it translates into another medium, and it's not how it's visualized or how it's felt. You kind of understand that you're going to get some folks that will, and who might not necessarily jump to the logic of, oh, well, 3.5 hours. It took me, 17 weeks to read the book, but 3.5 hours, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't correlate. So,
yeah.
But you understand how impactful, the Lord of the Rings, maybe more than any other kind of a book of fiction, and for some folks, fact, has affected people, has given folks confidence and hope, and folks get married to it, and it's like you find romance and just the whimsy and just and certain. When I read it, it was at a key point in my life that impacted me for the rest of my life. So you understand why there is often an outcry, because it comes from such a personal place of self-identity.
Yeah, that Cliff, did you feel that when you first read Lord of the Rings, that like you started to form your personal identity around those books?
When you're a child and you realize that there are characters in stories that you want to emulate, this happens across a very wide spectrum when children are introduced to stories very early on. And you go from this developmental stage as a young child reading the simplest things that don't have any words in it at all, just pictures. And then your reading skills grow and change. And eventually you get to a point where you're introduced to something that's a bit bigger and more ambitious than a child has ever bothered to take on before. Usually, those books fall into the category of The Hobbit, The Wizard of Oz.
Mm.
For a lot of children in America, it might have been a Nancy Drew or a Hardy Boys story back in the 50s. You know, there's a certain point where children pick up their first thing, and at some period in time in American history, it was Mark Twain. For some kids, it's Dickens, A Christmas Carol. And with a help of an older person or a teacher, they can get real through the difficult words, the vocabulary that's challenging. But children always want to emulate somebody that they deeply admire in literature, which is why comic books and Superman and Batman have such a profound effect on young minds in such an incredible way. But The Hobbit, just The Hobbit itself,
Yeah.
fits in that golden median,
Yeah.
at that perfect age where a young person actually picks up literature for the first time and it blows their mind. You know what I mean? You know, Sebastian, what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
and to answer your question, Justin, yes, very, very much. I wanted to emulate Bilbo, his love of books, his love of food, his his uh, his ability to get past his own personal limitations and his myopic way of looking at the world and get out of his own house and go off to far distant lands. That turned on the brain functions and the imagination so wildly in my head. It's amazing. And then, not far after that, at 11 years old, I was introduced to Frodo and Sam. And it was Samwise that I wanted to emulate most of all because of his fierce loyalty and his unquestioning faith that things would be all right if you just worked hard and if you believed in yourself. You could get there no matter how impossibly impossible it was. You could get there, and so I shifted from Bilbo to Samwise as this kind of personality and these personal qualities, where no matter what was at stake, your spirit would hold true. And there's something about Tolkien's work that brought that to me at a very young age.
Yeah.
And for others, it was, you know, other doorways into other young literature that happened for
So
others.
so what do you guys think drives, like, Cliff, we both know people that walked out of the Two Towers in cinemas because they couldn't believe that the hobbits were at Osgiliath. The movie was so far removed from the book that loyal long-term fans were so disgusted that you know, when Samwise says we shouldn't even be here and goes into this epic speech, and people stood up and said, "You're damn right, you shouldn't be here. The hobbits were never at Osgiliath." Um, so my question to you guys is, what do you think drives that level of passion? Because it's not coming from I don't know, it's not coming from a level of negativity and wanting to hate. It's a level of passion for the books that they read and the scene that they probably have in their mind's eye. You know, you know, the books have inspired imaginations, but did we ever anticipate that level of loyalty? I guess the question is, Sebastian, you've gone to so many cons and you've seen so many fans, you know, and bring up their kids on your books and your stories. Do you see that level of fandom and loyalty already being generated with your stories?
We do. I mean, it's, you know, I want to show you something really bonkers. It's actually right here. Can you see this?
Yeah.
So this is actually two of our super fans, Brian and Celeste Cornish. They're such fans that they actually wanted to be on the cover of a comic. So we've actually homaged them. It was Josh's idea to kind of homage the Green Arrow and the Green Lantern and do an homage cover and mimic this, because Celeste can't get enough of this one particular Niobe cover down here. So this is literally an homage cover. So we have fans that are absolutely rabid for our stuff, and then also because of our, the story, our lead hero, this lady right here, Niobe.
Yay.
And this was the first nationally distributed comic with a Black female author, artist, and hero. And so also we have a lot of folks that are just excited to see representation, in addition, obviously, to Black folks and women and girls and grandmothers and so on, and we see the transition from this Niobe to this Niobe. And then when you see these transitions and you grow, it's like when it's not unlike when you grow from The Hobbit to Lord of the Rings, and you grow with the characters as you get older. You can kind of grow with the character, like Harry Potter. You grow with these characters. And so when we closed our deal and we announced with HBO, and fans were, at these conventions, I'm not exaggerating. Some were like crying for us, but oftentimes we'd get folks coming up to the booth, sometimes crying, seeing themselves in these stories, especially elders in their 70s and so on. And I have spent, with Daryl and Josh now, they've been with me for 20 years or so, but I've been spending 30 years creating this world. So it's very baked. But I think the main point is not, coming back to the earlier point, is it's not just representation it is representation of humanity, of the spirit of story. So when you think, like what Cliff was saying, as far as Bilbo's, Bilbo to me inspires hope for you can be more than you think you are. And, so for me as a young boy, I was dealing with a bit of bullying and dealing with all these various things. That's why the Hulk was my favorite, because I was really, don't hurt me or I'm going to go crazy. But the other side of me was very Bilbo. I just want to, drink tea and listen to jazz records and just chill, right? And with the Niobe character and some of the other characters we put forth, I think what we try and do is, when you have a good story, it's not just the world is beautiful and serene or chaotic, or because we now as people are desensitized by Avengers and Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, all these big stuff. You've kind of almost seen it all in some respects. It takes a lot to go, oh my God, that's even more explosion-y cool. And also you're also distracted with apps and politics and social media and this and this and this and this and this. So for me, what we've done, which comes back to some of the more early literature concepts, I feel, is we still have all that, but if you took it all away and just focused on the relatable theme of human spirit, like Niobe is, sure, she's mixed, but she's also half elven, half human, half angel, half demon, to reflect the duality within all of us. So there are things that we can deal with, kind of this, very similar to Aragorn, obligation, adventure, all these kind of shifts and pulls. That I think that's what separates Lord of the Rings, so far, for me, is in the world, in Tolkien's world, is you can see yourself in, there's an array of characters to see yourself, and then even when you see yourself, it sheds light on how you can be a better version of yourself, and it's inspiring. So with The Stranger in the Untamed, it's really about a man after he makes this deal with the devil, but he's got 7 days to be a better father. So it's just about second chances and hope for redemption. But what would you do with, we all have regrets, and we all go, oh, what would I do better? What would I do differently? and but really bake it down into the most core
So
human vibe,
so as I love this conversation that both you and Cliff are going into the themes and the characteristics, but let's go to a more surface level. As we said, like any minute change from in Lord of the Rings from the books to the movies was called out by fans.
Sure.
Negatively, positively, it was just noted. As a creator who is transitioning from your novels and graphic novels into television now, how do you as a creator approach the inevitability that what you drew in the comics may or will look different on screen?
Right.
The character designs will be different. Do you protect your vision contractually, creatively, otherwise, and at the production stage, or is it more important to prepare the fans for a new vision with the same themes?
I think there's a bit of a mix of both, honestly. You've got to prepare the fans, as best as you can, but also understand that, okay, I'm a writer. What's in my head might get translated slightly differently onto paper by the time it gets to Daryl, by the time it then gets from Daryl to the artist. So it's already, you're already understanding that if you have this kind of myopic arrogance that you have the right answer, you're in trouble. So to me, what I try and do is say, okay, if I'm, God willing, everything gets greenlit and we get to these next phases because we're just in development. But still, it's awesome to be in development.
Yeah.
To say, okay, I'm going to understand, like my old man always says, work with people smarter than you. You want to essentially be open, in my opinion, be confident enough with what you've created is pretty badass, is pretty awesome. And then at the same token, be open enough for someone to be, hey, what about, for the lack of a better, what if we add an extra feather in the hair? What if we and we change that color to blue because that makes this pop more? Or what if this here? Or how does this design look? And when you see it cinematically, go, oh, from a comic medium where we're literally, picking our choice stills, and then an artist might also differ from what I wanted originally, and go, well, I'm not the one drawing it, and I can't throttle them until they get it exactly how I want it. You kind of have this understanding that is going to happen in this new medium, and understand and embrace, to me, the film and television medium in the best way that can be presented. Mm-hmm. I really believe, I'm precious about what I feel I need to be precious about. I'm very, if they're like, look, at the very beginning of Stranger Comics, we were offered from a producer to make Niobe the Untamed. They said, okay, but we have to turn Niobe into a white boy. And I was like, no, I'm done. So
what?
So there's certain fundamentals. I'm like, there's certain things that have to be true. When I think of Gods of Egypt and you got 6 white dudes and one black dude, I think that's, a joke. I think it's pathetic.
That's the opposite of real life.
Right. Exactly. But to your question, I understand fans going to freak.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Forgive me. I almost forgot that film entirely existed. Just almost forgot it.
Yeah, I mean, you wonder, shout out to the actors. I'm sure you're all fucking cool, but surely you get the script and go, I don't know about this. Maybe I shouldn't do this. I don't know. I should maybe do something that's
So how do you prepare your fans, your hardcore fans, who will be the biggest champions of the show and the biggest noisemakers for the show? How do you prepare them for a different look, to maybe what they fell in love with?
Well, I mean, you can only do so much, but at the same token, I think we have the added benefit of being a visual medium as well. So there's certain things that are blueprinted in comics, as opposed to a novel where folks have the imagination and of course the beautiful description. But people read books, people read scripts, people read what's on the page differently. And I think with all the kind of the artwork and the concept art and the comics, I think there is a certain visual blueprint that would be like, wait a minute, why have they got space guns? I don't think it'll depart that much, but I don't think you can really prepare. It's look, we're in a day of age where people are actually saying, I'm a victim because I have to wear a mask. So everyone wants to, there's a lot of folks that want to feel oppressed or want to feel like, oh my God, I got to rail against this. It's like, there's stuff that's, slightly like there's some real shit.
What my friend calls it an obsession with martyrdom.
Right.
Cliff, going back to something Sebastian just said, great turn of phrase here. That's why he's a great writer. Cliff, Tolkien himself was kind of a myopically arrogant creator. He was like, you know what? No other person can draw the cover of The Hobbit, so I'm just going to make all the illustrations myself. And like he had total control and maintained total creative control visually and language wise.
He had such a good relationship with his publisher. His publisher was aware of his talents as a watercolorist and as an illustrator.
Right.
So
objectively talented, or just I'm going to do it myself?
Look, just for the English editions, he didn't get involved in doing the illustrations for all the foreign editions. That was something else entirely.
Including America, where Barbara Remington, rest her soul, she died this year, did the first paperback covers, I believe, which he, without even reading the books. Yeah, can you imagine someone doing the cover to your book, not reading it?
I mean, we literally spoon feed people. This is what it looks like, as best as possible. Like, we are not. I mean, I can relate to the control freakness of in that regard in a very, very high level. But but you also want to give. If you work with an artist who is a genius or brings a level of beauty and nuance that you don't see coming, it's like, yes, I'm a freaking lunatic. Okay. But I have to have the understanding that someone might bring something. If I'm just like this, how can my world grow laterally as well with new and fresh ideas? And I'm good. I'm no Tolkien. So I want to experience other people's ideas, and I'm also not shy about saying, that shit sucks.
One of the things there's a book that came out this year with by John Garth, Tolkien scholar, called The World of Tolkien, and I believe he's doing a follow-up book. But the one thing I really liked about the book, it's a book about what inspired Tolkien. What town did he live in? What was in that town? Oh, there were 2 giant grain towers near him. I wonder why. Just actual real world inspirations for what he translated, what he eventually put in his books. And I love that this book, in the year of our Lord 2020, is breaking down that myth of sub-creator. And like, this is just a real human being with real life inspirations.
Yep.
He didn't create out of whole cloth, and he was inspired by things that happened and people that he surrounded himself with.
Yeah. I mean, I think, like my mum always says, write what you know. When I'm doing my little, teaching panels and lectures and whatnot, and folks say, what are you inspired by or influenced by, or however you want to call it? For me, the Untamed storyline is, again, it's like I made some mistakes, and what would I do to atone for it? So you have very real themes that reflect my own, experiences in life. And then, other things that I was always very inspired by, and it was sound, vibrations, chanting, Gorecki. I listened to a lot of Gorecki when I was writing the Untamed. And then also I listened to a lot of John Coltrane's wife, Alice Coltrane. There's certain sounds and vibrations. So for me, usually, if I have an idea for a comic or a story, I bounce around with the chaps, or maybe something that appears to them or to me or whatever. I'll usually sounds really obnoxious, but I try and sit within my spirit a little bit and listen to certain sounds, and then that helps me formulate the rhythm and the patterns for how people speak, how they interact, how there's how they walk, their sense of smell, and the story that they'll inhabit. That's so and my influences and inspirations as a kid cinematically was Kurosawa and Sergio Leone and Spike Lee and Scorsese, but I would say Kurosawa more and Sergio more than anyone else. And so, and then my day-to-day life, being a mixed kid, growing up, and experiencing what it was to be mixed, and what it was to be kind of like a broken-hearted romantic, it very much falls in, like, the reason why I fell in love with an executive at HBO was he was executives often, they say, like, what's the demographic and what's this and what's that, and this gentleman said, he said, can I ask you a question? Is the stranger you? And I was floored by it. And I said, yeah, well, why do you, so we talked a bit, and after that he said, can I ask you another, is Niobe you? And he got it, and he got that there was a very viscerally personal relationship with me and these characters that I can only assume, Professor Tolkien had, especially with some of these iconic characters like Bilbo. And I would think Bilbo probably seminal, these are different reflections of your vulnerabilities to your, ambitions, and you can pour these different things into different characters. So I think I'm even the reflection of social justice, those types of things. I mean, it's, you pick up one of our books and it's like, oh, this has got, Niobe Shear's death is all about her hunting down sex traffickers and slave traders. It's to reflect our own black and brown girls, that mostly black and brown, that get abducted around the world. So, you bring that stuff to light, but while she's going through her own personal journey. So these things are, reflected of your own surroundings.
And the thing is, although that sounds like a modern narrative, this is a true issue for the history of mankind. It's not new. Jocelyn Carter in the chat room brought up a couple of good points when we were talking about working with people. Maybe Mr. Tolkien, Cliff, correct the record, but she says maybe Mr. Tolkien was concerned his vision couldn't be properly interpreted by another artist.
No, his publisher trusted him to make the maps and the dust cover, the dust jacket for The Hobbit. It all began from there. And
is it true? Is it true that Tolkien considered Maurice Sendak to do some illustration work?
Oh, that's intriguing. I would have to look that up. I wonder. The problem that Tolkien had most of the time was that in other editions of the books, like in the case of the American printing, they were changing words that he didn't want changed.
Right.
He was way more riled up about the plural of dwarves, RVES, being changed by the American copy editors back to dwarfs with an FS. That pissed him off more than the concept of one of the illustrators making a dust jacket that didn't look quite right. that was where his interests.
This is why I really think, and I've debated this many times, that he did have a lifelong competitive streak with many things in his life, but especially Walt Disney. The Hobbit was published in September 37. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs premiered December 37. The 3 months. So basically, there have two stories of teams of dwarves in the marketplace at the same time. While The Hobbit sold well and he was celebrated as the future of fantasy authorship, we know what happened to Walt Disney. He was celebrated as the genius and the future of storytelling.
Right.
And I have to believe, and critically, Disney purposely said dwarfs with an F, right? Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and then
a more standardized English spelling.
Yeah, and Tolkien wanted to own the word dwarves with a V in his world. George Lucas famously does that now, right? Tolkien changed dwarfs to dwarves so he could own the word. George Lucas, in one of his story meetings, someone created the character Ashoka. George said, "Hey, I can't copyright Ashoka. Can we flip those two words around, the letters around, and call her Ahsoka?" So Tolkien was doing what George Lucas is doing now, and Tolkien was a smart man, business-wise and otherwise, and I think he was open to collaboration, but I think the chat room is right, and I think you guys are right.
Let me ask you a question real quick, Justin. Is it AT-AT or is it AT-AT? You answer me that.
It's both.
Oh, okay.
It's both, right? We can have we can have both. But speaking of changes, the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit Tolkien was the best-selling author of the 20th century worldwide. His books have been translated into every language, and as you said, even translating into American English, there were issues. Cliff, as far as I recall, in The Lord of the Rings, he never describes the races of any of the characters, and the closest you get is describing Aragorn as dark complexioned, but the races aren't visually described as far as skin color or anything.
Professor Tolkien does not even describe Legolas's hair color. So that's why sometimes you have artists who produce Legolas with raven black hair, and most of them have him with blonde hair. So there's some latitude in how you can figure out the hair color of certain characters, but no, Professor Tolkien did not give us those specifics. He was not interested really in those specifics. He was, as I've said in our last week's show with Tolkien professor Corey Olson, I do honestly believe that Professor Tolkien was far more interested in the internal world of his characters and their metaphysical challenges and failings. That was a lot more interesting to him, and that's why he didn't bother to work out what the level of melanin was in certain characters. That wasn't his concern. He was more interested in their spiritual dilemmas.
So I guess the next question is, Seb, when you're reading Lord of the Rings for the first time before the movies are out or anything, what are you envisioning in your mind's eye for these characters? And did you see that on screen?
It's funny. It's been so, I haven't read them since apart from The Hobbit, I read it to my boy. That's now like 10 years ago. And I haven't read Lord of the Rings since I was probably 13. So it's I think it's this, is you try and envision yourself, no matter where you're from, in as these characters. It's the same way how, to me, and not to sound too wild with my ideas, but It's like, when people want to envision certain religions and faiths, it's like, well, dude, like, let's say Jesus was a, rad dude that was around. He wasn't in a European setting, so chances are he was dark brown and had, you know, features and skin tone that reflects the region. And I think when it comes to the realities of um, no matter what kind of fiction you're creating, and I have to always kind of remind folks because people again they take this as part of their own identity, right? It is rooted in so many ways in who they are. If you take it from a very anthropological basic foundation to say, if you're if you are elf, dwarf, human, etc., and you're from an area where it just pisses rain every day and it's cloudy and gray, chances are you're not going to get a lot of sunlight. Chances are, if you look at our world, if you want to use it as a template, you're not going to have a lot of dark brown folks hanging out in those kind of climates. Um, it just fundamentally, if you are taking it, or if you're from the more desertous region, chances are you'll have darker brown folks there. It's just, you have taller people where there are trees that are taller to reach for fruit. I mean, all the various things that we kind of know and study. And then you can add fantastical elements too, and you can add your own history of geography and geology and migration patterns and movements of races and so on to kind of fit the narrative that you want to say. You can be like, yo, okay, so these black folks were kicking it in this part but 1,000 years ago, they migrated here, and that's where they are now. So they haven't, that's why there is a population of darker brown folks, even in this more kind of, pale, cold landscape, because they had to flee because of this, that. You can kind of fit the narrative you want, but, just fundamentally, I always, for me, when I was reading Lord of the Rings growing up, from what I remember, and I think we talked about this before, is I always assumed, and I could be right, because it could have just been in the zeitgeist of the narrative, is elves are fair. So when I think of fair, I think of, light skin and that kind of stuff. And folks from Harad and Umbar were darker, but those are kind of, again, like generalizations. And but for me, I think if I was to really search my soul, I would say that I just I saw them, I grew up in England, even being a mixed dude, I grew up in a very small white village. So I probably saw all of the characters that were the main heroes as European, and Tolkien has such a English sounding, way of speech. That's probably how I saw that stuff. Maybe with Aragorn, but then also I think it's a very kind of traditional white narrative to say he's tall, dark, and handsome, and it's basically just he's got black hair and thick eyebrows like this. But again, I think you and I touched on justice. Like this is third age, and you can look at second age, and you can literally say, okay, the folks from Numenor, they are of this complexion because they hail from this region, and so on. So, it's a freaking it's, I hate to break it to folks, like this is a beautifully made up creation that you get to embrace, and it's also exciting to see other folks embrace these characters the same way that the majority of the world have, and they get to experience the beauty of what Tolkien has created. I think that's the conversation that should be had, is rather than this selfish ownership. It's not a piece of pie. Nothing is being taken away from you. It's other folks get an opportunity to embrace a global perspective on a global Middle Earth and enjoy it, and come along for the ride, and let's grow together. I mean, that surely should be the way we are moving forward as in humanity, elves,
Mhm.
dwarves, and us humans,
The did you see the recent casting announcement for Amazon's Lord of the Rings series?
I did, yeah, yeah. I think it's awesome. I'm always, you know, I'm always a little skeptical. I always, jump back and kiss myself and I'm always like, okay, I want to see representation. I always do, but I always want to see authentic representation. But then I don't know enough. So I'm like, this is awesome. This, if we're looking at Middle Earth as a global universe and we see this, I'm like, that looks like a global representation of a world that I want to be a part of. I want to be a part of a global world. I get to experience the nuances of races and cultures and what they can bring to the table. You know, so I think it's a beautiful thing.
When you
And I
s-
and
when
I
you
see Lenny Henry, and I'm like, I grew up on that dude. Like this
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
there's a
for us Americans, can you explain the significance of Lenny Henry? Like we don't know him at all here in America, and he is a legend from England.
yeah, Lenny Henry is a comedian. He kind of came up around the same time Eddie Murphy was a big deal in the world. And Lenny Henry was our Eddie Murphy. I mean, it sounds terrible to be that comparative one to one. It's ridiculous. But Lenny Henry was an absolute legend, having his own TV shows in England, an absolute genius, comedic genius. Has some of my favorites, the Lenny Henry Show. I mean, this is an iconic.
He
Uh,
created the that comedy for charity thing
the
that
Red Nose.
yeah, the red nose that turned into the thing that Billy Crystal, Whoopi
Yep,
Goldberg, Robin Williams brought to America.
Yep.
absolutely. Yeah, he was one of the founders of that. Absolutely, he was. Yeah, absolute icon. I mean, it's amazing. What's cool too for me is when you see someone like Lenny Henry get the recognition for it's going to be on a global stage in this epic global franchise. The world's going to get to see incredible talent do their thing.
What, so what if your first gut reaction, Lenny Henry, elf, man, or dwarf?
Well, I mean, my first gut reaction, I mean, I was thinking human, you know, but then when I hear the irony is in my world that the king of the dwarfs is black. So I was like, oh, that's crazy, this is a rising tide thing, and it's interesting, for me, it's one of these things where I'm very excited for the world to embrace a global fantasy franchise. And then at the same token, it's something that I've been trying to build for 30 years of my life in these comic books and having a lot of love and a lot of pushback and a couple of death threats and a few people that are in tears loving it. And, so I love seeing it. I'm just praying to Jeebus that it's authentically done and all for the right reasons. And it will reflect cultures and landscapes and climates and geology and geography and we get to also in some respects forget and we just get to experience too the spirit of who these characters are and the story. So it's this double-edged sword where you almost want it to be like you don't want to notice, but at the same token you have to notice because there has to be cultural significance. I am not a fan whatsoever of pandering. I'm not a fan whatsoever of, you watch a fictitious universe or a universe, you're like, oh, they're plopping in certain quotas, no matter what it is, to fit a potential studio or distribution narrative or what they feel the populace wants. If it's not, doesn't have, because there are things let's be just real here. Like, you know, black, brown, different black cultures, different countries in Africa, to the Caribbean, to folks in America, to, black folks that are in Brazil, wherever you are, we all walk differently. We have different scents. We have different ways to dance. We have different cultures of, tradition, ceremonies. We view art as art in a lot of cultures. Their dance and their sculptures are not for art. They're just acts of ceremony.
Yeah.
So these types of things, I think, when I have the odd meeting and it's like, yay, okay, cool, we've got representation, but without understanding the depths of the cultural representation and what that really truly is. Because we eat different foods, we wear different clothes, we have sex differently, we kiss differently, we have different hair, we have different rhythms to our life, we stand on the corner differently. Everything is different, and that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing for us to explore, and we have the opportunity to see it. So if these folks are doing it right, how wonderful we get to embrace it. And if it's not, then then to me it's pandering, and it's like, oh, let's get this stuff in. So
let me get your guys' reaction.
I imagine that the picture frame of Tolkien's view is over in the northwestern part of Middle Earth,
right,
for much of the time of the Third Age.
Yes.
During the War of the Ring, that framework of the storytelling back references other areas and other regions and things that are not there. But
right,
now the showrunners in the Second Age on Amazon's show have an opportunity to take that framework right out of that limited geography,
right,
and do what the Numenorians did, which is travel the globe and see and influence so many other cultures and tribes and people of Middle Earth who have, unfortunately, been contacted and influenced by Morgoth centuries before.
right.
So this is a completely legitimate framework of, and I mean to deliver this message as briefly as I can to, some of the YouTubers that I see who are putting up these stupid videos complaining about, oh my gosh, all this stupid woke casting and this here's one diversity to rule them all. And I'm like, okay, look,
Right.
there is nothing wrong with Professor Tolkien keeping a linguistic and narrative focus in the War of the Ring, while the rest of his stories carry a completely different linguistic and metaphysical and cultural framework, where the Numenorians have contact with all these other people around the globe. And again, I think it is always boiled down to who got there first. The elves bringing the light of the two trees and the enlightenment, like the Numenorians brought, or were there emissaries of Morgoth who brought fear, lies, entrapment, and threats of political and military reprisal, and things that turned nations against nations as part of Morgoth's spiritual plan to screw up everything in Arda and mess it all up just for the sake of watching it burn. It is very unusual for me to see people who are clearly more intelligent, usually, trying to fall back on argument that the Lord of the Rings has no story to tell at all, except a porcelain white Northern European story, when that never, ever, ever was the case at all. I never believed that. And you can see in all the expanded stories that Christopher Tolkien gave us that was indeed deep within Tolkien's mind to cast this world much further abroad. Don't you think, Seb?
Yeah, I do. I think you hit it on the head, honestly, Cliff. It's like, to have one man judged for the scope of the story that he wanted to tell as well is ridiculous, because there's only so many hours in a day. In my world, I've created a very big world, and you tell. So Tolkien's, like you were saying, the Third Age, if that if that's mostly focused in a certain area, you're like, well, what about the other areas? What about what came before? Let's go and explore that, and let's explore that together. It's kind of 1+1. So if we're not seeing the same story that we've seen in Fellowship, Two Towers, and Return, and we're getting to how fucking cool we get to experience other stories in other landscapes with other cultures that are obviously the frameworks are there to play in, and we get to go and explore that. I think it comes back to just what I was saying at the top was people wrap up their identity like a security blanket in their faith of religion, Star Wars, Tolkien, like this is their security blanket, and anything that pulls that blanket off a little bit makes them cold and afraid. And it's like, no, I'm going to strip you completely naked, and you're going to have to put on some new clothes and go and explore and get off your street and go and explore the surrounding neighborhoods and the surrounding cities and then the surrounding countries and expand your mind. That's the beauty of this opportunity. And I just think, though, people always look, though, guys, I mean, you know this, at the headline. What's the post? Let me see some pictures. Oh, my goodness, this is a diverse cast. But I only know this. I'm now automatically typing my anger, and I'm looking at this rather than just saying, well, why is this? Let me at least read the next freaking paragraph. Oh, shit, it's not even in the third age. It's in the second age, and it's not in this part there. Oh, okay, well, that makes sense then. I mean, it's really that simple.
Someone in the chat room, and I just verified it, Imran in the chat room says, Lenny Henry has a PhD in Black representation from Royal Holloway University.
Oh, wow.
So this is more encouraging than just having the stature of Lenny Henry in Lord of the Rings. You have to believe that someone of his stature that has a PhD in Black representation in media.
I tell you what, I remember even when I was still in England watching Lenny Henry doing a documentary on funk music and James Brown and having interviews with, and I'm a huge James Brown fiend, fanatic, lunatic, and interviewing all of his musicians, and then the transitions from soul to jazz to funk and so on, and to the early formulations of hip hop. And it was had a big impact on me. So you can, I mean, listen, he's a smart dude.
He's a smart dude, and he would not be joining this show just for a paycheck. He doesn't need the money. He is huge. The fact that he's involved, I don't think this is a stunt casting. I don't think this is a bit part. Lenny Henry doesn't take bit parts. And at this level, he is here to elevate Tolkien to another level. I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, am I wrong in
I don't think so. No, I think it's like, this is the day and age of this medium. And I think it's an opportunity to embrace new cultures, new experiences, new areas, new landscapes, new ways of coming together. And that frightens folks because they feel it takes away from them. That's all it is. It does not take away from anybody. It's allowing you to explore and grow. It's like going, on a very myopic level, it's a really silly distilled thing. It's like saying, do you like going to the fucking Thai restaurant? Well, if you you never had a Thai restaurant on your block, you wouldn't know what the hell it tasted like. Oh my God, look at these people. They've come to take over my burgers. No, you now get to experience some freaking Thai food. Shut the fuck up. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and I don't want to sound all crazy or whatever, but you have an opportunity to allow incredible storytellers to tell new stories with amazing frameworks in your favorite world.
And by the way, Tolkien encouraged this. He, in his letters, he said he encouraged other minds wielding paint and drama and music, which is what filmmaking is, to build upon the foundations that he has written. And
You can't do it all, man. Like there's only so many freaking hours in a day, so many years in your life. If again, it's like, all right, what is it? Like full stop? I mean, when I'm dead, should I just like toss this shit in the trash? Like you want to carry on this journey, like his son. I mean, that's the beauty of this opportunity. And we just hope and pray to Eru and all the cool groovy gods and dragons or whatever, that the folks that are making this shit are good.
People in the chat, Scuba Steve in the chat room says, hey, a few weeks ago we teased something big. Well, that big tease happened. We're talking about it today. The cast announcement, the Wave 2 cast announcement that adds to the previous cast that we knew of. Added Lenny Henry and so many wonderful actors. They even added the Scottish guy from Westworld, one of my favorite parts of season 2 of Westworld. But Lenny Henry is probably the biggest name to be announced, and we got that up on screen now. That was the big announcement. I knew it 2 weeks in advance, and I was trying to tease it to you guys, but Amazon wouldn't let me touch. Cliff said I was going to get my head cut off if I had leaked it. So I'm trying to play nice about this, but that was the big scoop that we had a couple weeks ago, and we're still talking about it weeks later because the conversation that's happened on Instagram, on our Facebook page, has been just wild, and wild in not a good way. Because
but guys, listen. I mean, look,
it's been a mixed bag.
When we look at this last year, right? We talk politically. Okay, and there's a push for Black Lives Matter. Okay, and the Black Lives Matter is in result of some atrocities that happen. And then you have folks go, well, my life matter too. Yes, okay, cool. If I'm saying, fuck cancer, I'm not like I don't have to go like, what, fuck every disease. Can we just talk about this for a second?
Yeah,
it's. But as soon as you bring about something that's like, what about me? We're talking about them. Well, what about me? That's the same thing with this. The pushback of, yes, the woke movement, and some of that shit is cool and some of it is ridiculous. But the bottom line is, these type of affirmative action, Black Lives, these are in reaction to real atrocities and real things. And then, but what happens is, then there's a pushback that then that's a spillover. And I think it's the same thing. Like, as soon as you've got like, oh, we've got Black Panther, and now we got this. Well, at least we've got our Lord of the Rings. Oh shit, we don't even have that now. These people, it's like Jesus.
And what we're saying is, what we've been trying to say for years now is that Tolkien is the best-selling author of the 20th century. More books from Tolkien were sold in the world, second only to the Holy Bible. He is literally the best-selling author besides the Holy God and Jesus Christ and whatever else you want to call it, the author of the Bible, right? In the 20th century. So everyone in the world has read these stories. Tolkien does not describe race anywhere, and it is true. And Cliff has taught me that when it comes to Tolkien stories, it starts with a map. If Tolkien is first a linguist, second he's a cartographer, and he drew maps. The second most important thing besides the written word to Tolkien fans are the maps. And as you both just described, the geography dictates the culture. Geography dictates the culture, not wokeness, not political correctness.
Let me show you something. So, all right, this graphic novel is called Erethune. Okay. Yeah. This Erethune one is set in the Scandinavian part of our world.
That's the dwarf story, right? The dwarves.
This is one of the dwarves in the Scandinavian region of Hurfang. Okay. Mm-hmm. This one with a bunch of elves, but they're the Galamren of this region, is set in Ugoma, the Ugoma jungle. So it's kind of like parts of our West Africa, right?
Mhm.
So this story takes place here. So most of these folks are going to be black. This story takes place there. So most of these folks are going to be white. And there are some black characters that are part of the adventure in this story. Same with this story. This also takes place in an area, most folks are black. It's the geography and location of the story that you're telling. Otherwise, yes, in my opinion, it's some pandering shit. It just makes sense.
So
I would like to take that exact point, Sebastian, and acknowledge two of the active chatters in our live chat. That would be Joshua and also Kalia, who've both said the identical same thing, that diversity is great so long as it makes sense to be placed within the story. Middle Earth is primarily set within European culture, pre-migration, pre-race integration. And Joshua also says that diversity not for the sake of diversity, but in a way that remains true to Tolkien. And it's exactly what you just said. And in combination, in synthesis, with what Justin and I have also said, if the showrunners at Amazon Studios are taking the framework outside of where Tolkien hovered around as if there was a hovercraft in the Third Age, and the Lord of the Rings was primarily hovering around just that geography, that's where the languages of the Rohirrim and Adunaic languages and Elvish languages were mostly at play in Tolkien's narrative form. But if the showrunners now take us where the Numenorians were going, and the framework and the camera goes to all these other regions, it does make absolute perfect sense.
It's got to.
Arda to follow the journeys of these Numenorians and meet and explore all these other languages and cultures and find out who got there first, Morgoth or the good guys. I don't see any problem here with this integration where everybody can be happy and stop making such a fuss about it.
You hit it on the head, Cliff. Like if their story is the Numenorians going to explore different cultures and different regions around a world, not a continent, but a world, you're going to see some other folks. It's a freaking world. If you stay just on a continent, you're going to just see some of the same type of folks, but see more of the world, you're going to see other folks. It's kind of 1+1. You might, to call out some of the racists, you might not like to see some of the other folks.
I mean, we know why all the Twilight vampires were all pearly white and glittery, because the story was only set in the forests of the northwestern United States.
Yeah, there's no sun up there. Hey, what do you think what if Lenny Henry is the dwarf king that built the great halls of Khazad-dûm?
I think people are going to poop in their pants. I think they'll have I think they will not. I mean, it's so wild to me. I don't know if I've got one like lurking around here, but
here's the thing: in the established cinematic universe, the dwarves have been established as the comedians of Middle Earth, like both Gimli and all the three Hobbit movies.
There's a certain unfortunate aftertaste to that. You're right. But cinematically, the dwarves have currently been positioned as the funnier of all the races.
I think that's always
not with the Hobbit. The Hobbit trilogy went a long way towards establishing Shakespearean tragedy for the lines of Durin, Longbeards, really.
I think that's generally, there are often tropes in storytelling. It's like, and there are certain go-to things, it's like, okay, by page X, we need our explosion. By page Y, we need our comic relief. This is a somber tale. Who's going to provide levity? When are we going to hit those key points to have the levity so we have a breathing moment? And a lot of times I think the dwarves have been dwarves have been the go-to, they're like, I've got the beard and the Scottish accent and and the chicks have beards too. And it's just this automatic, like, okay, let's pull out a couple of laughs. Okay, here are the moments. it's that. In my world, I've gone completely the opposite. Like,
well, that's what I was going to ask you. By the way, the chat room is saying, Sebastian, we need you on the show more often. You're a smart guy. I was going to ask you, seeing this cast for Lord of the Rings, which is the fantasy this fantasy is Lord of the Rings, and every fantasy is derivative of Lord of the Rings in some capacity.
Of course, yeah.
Seeing this diverse cast for the billion-dollar most expensive TV show in history, Lord of the Rings, are you encouraged by that? And will this help your own TV series at HBO?
I mean, I'm encouraged because I love Lord of the Rings.
That's the answer.
I mean, yeah, I'm excited to see it, and I just hope it's as awesome as I want it to be. For me, does it help? It doesn't help and it doesn't hurt. It comes down to the executives and people that are in the places of power. Some people have a very short, like, oh well, there's already one of those, or oh they've already done a Black Dwarf. I guess we won't do this shit. Like, oh motherfucker, I had this shit for like. I've been developing this shit for 30 years of my life,
Yeah.
And for some people, they'll go like, oh my God, we need one of these. Wait, we have one of these. I think it's, me personally, I've seen my own work mimicked, copied, plagiarized, pilfered, ideas stolen. You
really?
Left, right, and center from, inspired by that. I just literally say, like, I have this James Brown philosophy. I don't worry, I got mine, don't worry about his. It's like, if I make $100 and my enemy makes 1,000 or $1, I still make $100. If I make $100 and my friend makes 1,000 or $1, I want my friend to make 1,000.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I deal in jealousy, or I deal in anything other than my own journey and what I can do, then I'm already going,
fantasy has been heretofore. Fantasy has mostly been seen, under the lens of white fantasy, Scandinavian. Dungeons and Dragons has a very specific, archetype, in the public consciousness,
yes.
And so. By Amazon going this route with this casting and stuff that they haven't even announced yet, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
And we've already talked about it. It's true to Tolkien and it's true to the geography. But by Amazon's Lord of the Rings show planting this flag of this is going to be the most beautiful story that you've ever seen.
Well, I think my shit is.
Is that going to help? Does this elevate the entire genre of fantasy?
Of course, absolutely. How can it not? I think it's, look, when we came out with Niobe before Black Panther, we did this a year before Black Panther came out, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember, and the reaction. I saw the reaction at Comic-Con San Diego. You had a big booth, and I just remember like little girls thumbing through a comic that I'd never thought possible because they were there to see a TV show or something.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that's the beauty of the reality of making the kind of medium and the kind of stories you want to tell, and that's the only thing that to me really matters. Like, not everybody has to get on their soapbox and talk diversity. Not everyone has that in them organically. And I think the problem is when folks try and do it, sometimes, yes, it's good because rising tide, and hopefully they hire the right people who are smart to tell the stories the most authentically, and they hire the right people. That's why I'm always working with people better than me. We want to make sure the shit that we do has a spiritual, soulful resonance as well as authentic representation and story.
Princess Toy Nerd in the chat room says has commented many times today while we're talking about diversity that there are very few shows period that have featured mentally disabled people or anything like that. And I will say this: the new season of The Mandalorian was fantastic. I mean, they brought in actual hands. I won't say anything. They brought in actual sign language in the real world in there. So I think there are some good, and I have a feeling that it has to be on the docket. It has to be on the agenda, not an agenda of Lord of the Rings, of Asunda's HBO show, of everything moving forward. All of this has to be considered because these are global stories meant for a global audience.
Yes.
And we live in a global society that has all of these people.
Exactly. And how cool is it that everybody gets to experience it? That, I think, is coming back to Black Panther, it had such a massive explosionary hit that it created an opportunity. Like, for sure, I had offers for all of my stuff, but it was after Black Panther that I made my deal. but at the same token, I could have made deals before. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it does take big, impactful things in history for this juggernaut of the industry to go, okay, I guess that works. The fact that, do you know what I'm saying? Like, so if it takes the Lord of the Rings, it takes the Star Wars, it takes these things, and it's always, in the landscape of history, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Like I was saying, this is in reaction to, and so there will be a pushback to people feeling like, well, what about me? And all these types of things. It's always this push-pull, but it is 2 steps forward, 1 step back always.
That's right.
The fact that this is the first, all right, how long has Marvel and DC been around? Yeah. This is the first book in history with a Black female author, artist, and hero. In the history of all comics is our book in 2015. And then suddenly...
The people in the chat room who joined late did not hear the news at the top of the show that book you just hold up has been optioned by HBO for a huge new fantasy series.
Back in early last year, the entire world of Asunda, the entire library of Asunda with the Untamed, Niobe, and Usu. I'm executive producing the entire world of Asunda at HBO. And these are from these comics that me and a couple of very dear friends of mine have been working on for many, many years. And it is astounding to think we were the first, and we're a little independent company. And suddenly you saw after 2015, and we had global press on it because of my co-writer is an actress. Suddenly it was all over the news, all over the world. My mum's local newspaper. It was just suddenly a big, big deal. Tons of offers flying in, but none of them felt right because it felt like studios wanted to potentially grab my shit to do a diversity headline. So I'm super leery about when I make a deal. Why? Like I'm all good saying no and just carrying doing my comics and shit. I'm like this to me. I'm all good doing this. But the opportunity to then create stories that an entire global audience can enjoy and experience beyond the comic format and the outreach that has, that the world gets to experience these stories is magical. That opens up wonderful opportunities. But that was in 2015. Yeah. And then I suddenly saw comics that, looked and sounded like ours. And then suddenly I see a lot of people, executives coming by my booth and going like, oh, look at this. Oh, what's this? Now I'm not Marvel, right? So I see now and again things pop up. I'm like, all right, these motherfuckers, all right, cool. And I see other comic creators. I see other book writers. And I know tons of people that have done, I won't name any names, but folks that you'll go, really? Oh my God. what? But again, cool. Keep my head down. Keep working. Keep working. Keep working.
You've been living the dream. Speaking of keep working, let me bring this up on screen. I wanted to show you this.
Oh shit! Now we're gonna ruin everybody's life.
You've got a Kickstarter right now. Like you're still creating. You sold your show to HBO, and you're still creating. I wanted to show you this. We've got, if you go to Kickstarter.com, I just went to Kickstarter.com.
Did you back it yet, guys? Did you back it, Justin?
Well, I'm doing it today. I like to be last. Here's the thing. I like to be last. But
do it right now on the show.
But Sebastian, look at this. This is the front page of Kickstarter.
Oh, are we on the front page?
What? This is the front page of Kickstarter. Wow. You're on the front page of Kickstarter. I'm looking at it right now. Like this is the regular front page. I'm clicking ruining Christmas.
Okay, I like elves. Okay, guys. I do comics with elves.
Ruining Christmas.
Ruining Christmas. You tripled the money needed. This is a huge success already, and there's 3 days to go.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a very tough one in the sense that people know us only for the very kind of dramatic narratives we tell with our dark fantasy themes in Asunda and Niobe and the Untamed and whatnot. And this is a franchise that me and the chaps have been kind of nurturing for a decade. And really, it's kind of a reflection on the entitlement and apathy, right? Entitlement of the young, the apathy of the old. Folks have given up. So we created this kind of this storyline for Ruining Christmas where there's two idiot Christmas elves and they get the crap beaten out of them by the rottenest kid in all the land, and they lose Santa's hat, the source of all Christmas magic. And they have to go on a buddy mission to get it back. Oh my God, look, black elves. Wait, what?
When will we be at the point where it's not black elves, it's just elves?
Never.
Never? Do you like?
But I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing either, in the sense that it's okay to celebrate our differences and enjoy them and experience them. How cool is that shit? You know.
But the critical thing, and this relates to a bunch of nasty comments we see on Instagram. Black elves are not bad elves.
Well, that's because, of course, you've got like D&D had the drow elves and that whole thing. That's why in my fantasy world I had Mordecai super elves and I have the Galen. So scroll back up a second, Justin. Yeah, go back down again, just a wee bit. Not on that side. Yeah, there you go. Keep going down. I want to see if you guys can tell what film this is from. Keep going down a bit. Keep going. There we go. What is that from? Do you recognize that?
Usual Suspects?
There you go. Yeah, we did a little homage cover to The Usual Suspects.
That's awesome.
So basically, guys, all right, the theory of the Ruining Christmas universe is Hitler was the last kid to get a lump of coal, okay? And FDR and Churchill goes to Santa, goes, you got to knock that shit off. So we enter the nuclear age. And Santa has his elves invent cheer gas. So Christmas elves every year, they go and mace kids in the face with cheer gas to power up the love meter, because we don't love anymore, right? We think of Santa as a saint, like a god or a prophet. We've given up on Saint Nicholas, so he's given up on us.
Oh.
So now these poor Christmas elves have to go around macing kids in the face with cheer gas to power up the love meter to get Santa out of bed, this meth addict now, and go and drop gifts off at everyone's house. And then there's the Red Rose, the sister in the red. She's basically like Batman. Right, it's really big and wild, but the irreverent story that you have up here, and I've written it very much like a Guy Ritchie movie, like he's a snowflake.
I just watched Hot Fuzz.
I wouldn't trust him to shovel reindeer shit. You know, it's very, if you like British gangster movies, or you like Guy Ritchie, or like Simon Pegg, Nick Frost, Ricky Gervais, it's very much like that. It's very naughty, very irreverent, but really the subtext is about we've lost the ability to love and give. We say the spirit of giving has been taken.
I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm back in this. And I can get the full PDF for just $10.
You can get the whole PDF for $10 for the first long 40-page comic issue. We even did like a silly fun like an Ivy crossover.
Oh, that's nice.
And if you keep scrolling down on the campaign, you'll see actually like a lot of very pretty artwork. We have
well, this image sold me. Like the minute I saw this, I'm like, all right, I'm back in this for sure.
We have to do stuff that our regular kind of fans know us for, which is beautiful paintings. But yeah, keep scrolling down. I'll show you some more silliness. There's a little animation clip. You get to read this with a British accent.
You better believe I will. Are you going to do a narrated MP3 of this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's really wild. And there's different covers there. We have hip hop.
EWA.
Straight out of Pole. We've got the video game Mario Kart homage right there.
Oh, this is so good.
Yeah, it's this Jay Lee, his cover. So we had about two after we delivered. There's Frosty the Snowman. Frosty the Snowman, guys, is like a prohibition gangster. Okay, and he's like Willy Wonka of the Pole, and sells your merchandise, whether you've got the mistletoe masks, the mistletoe undies. I mean, look, you've seen the dramatic side. I mean, now this is the silly side. Okay.
Yeah, this is amazing.
There's Frosty's Frostbite condoms, just in case. There's RC Just the Tips. Big Love is the rival. It's like Slugworth. So you have the snowmen versus the gnomes. I mean, it is a little wacky and wild.
There it is. Who doesn't love to see a Nazi getting punched?
There you go.
That's if that doesn't get you, nothing will.
Wow.
This is great. This is like fully thought out.
Oh yeah, it's literally 10 years in development, and we delivered on the last Kickstarter, and then we had about 2 weeks to promote it. So for 2 weeks of promotion that no one's heard of this project before, I'm really, really over the moon with how people have responded to it.
This is great. Again, if you go to Kickstarter, there's 3 days left, as you can see on screen. Ruining Christmas. That's all you need to search for. Ruining Christmas on Kickstarter. Gosh, I want to support this just so you can get an animated TV deal for this, because I want this.
I appreciate it. There's a very big producer. A couple of other people like have suddenly seen this, and they are scouting it and right as we speak. So
are your dwarves spelled with an F or a V?
Well, it's so funny with the elves. I like to actually say elves because it just sounds more like he's an elf.
Yeah.
And you see on the side, that's actually little Paddy. That's the grandson of Saint Patrick, the one with the underboots. And the other one, the bunny rabbit, that's Easy B. That's the Easter bunny.
That's great. This is already amazing. Just the Kickstarter page is amazing.
And if you watch the video, we have actually the best Morgan Freeman impersonator.
Oh wow.
Morgan Freeman is too busy doing rap albums over there. Sebastian, this has been just a wonderful conversation right before Christmas. Thank you for taking some time during the holidays. No one's traveling, everyone's staying safe. And appreciate you taking the time to kind of have this conversation, talk about Tolkien, talking about geography and everything.
This is a great way to add more than common sense, but the personal power that you have that has backed you up in all the work that you've done as a writer, as a fantasist, as a creator, and in translation to how we understand modern fantasy. And a lot of this is like late 20th century fantasy. But now we're carrying it forward into this whole new century, this whole new wild perspective that is as you said, an excellent opportunity to broaden our minds and the scope of worldwide perspective. And Arda, it's not just Middle Earth we're talking about. It was all of Arda, which was a complete planet that had lots and lots going on. So thank you so much for your excellence and your perspective, Sebastian. It's always great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much.
This has been great. And for those wanting Green Dragon gossip, we'll have more to gossip about next week. There's
we will.
So many things happening in New Zealand and Middle Earth that we can gossip about. Who knows what's true and what's not? We hear stuff all the time. So if you live in New Zealand and you see anything unnatural, like a bunch of orcs just like hanging around a coffee table, take a picture, send it to us, slide into our DMs with all the juicy gossip that you see in and around New Zealand.
And everybody's asking for you to come back. And if you have spy reports, we definitely want those from you as well. Yes.
Okay. And for folks that want to, if you guys want to kind of experience our mythological world of Asunda, we do have maps as well. Yeah. So we've got all sorts of Hand of the Devilly type things.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much.
Oh, so beautiful.
And, there you go. Yeah, you've got it. There you go. And some of the beautiful hardcovers, we have bundled discount deals on our website. This is kind of how we get down. It's very...
and to be clear, Sebastian's owns Stranger Comics. You are totally independent, and with comic book stores closed nationwide, like, it's been a tough year for everybody, and I can imagine a tough year for publishing. So support small business.
Yeah, pop over to strangercomics.com. Go to the store.
You have a British accent, but you're based in the States and you ship from the United States, correct?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm in the wonderful world of Los Angeles with you guys. So I'm in LA. We ship everywhere. We could ship all around the world too. But yes, we do domestic shipping, and we have bundle deals, trade paperbacks, hardcovers, all sorts of fun stuff. So if you want to experience this world, I've spent 30 years creating that in the graphic novel and comic book formats while we were in major development for the entire world of Asunda. Pop over to Stranger Comics, and
the artwork doesn't do it justice through these webcams. I'm telling you, the artwork is bar none. He's probably sold the series on the artwork alone, let alone everything else.
Can I give the guys the one pitch that sold HBO?
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Okay, so here we go. This is a story about a man who's stuck in purgatory. And after 10 years, the devil comes along and he says, "I'll give you 7 days to reap the 7 souls that murdered you and your family." He says, "Sign me up." He takes a drifter's return to a one-horse town in a huge world. As his memory comes back in broken shards, he realizes he was a bad man and maybe he deserved to die, but now he's on a path to save his family. On his path of vengeance to save their soul, he meets a little elven girl called Niobe, and she reminds him of how old his murdered daughter would have been. Giving this man a second chance that we men need to be a good man, a father. He only has 7 days. The kicker is, what if she's one of the 7 souls he has to collect? And the devil set the whole thing up just to find her. Would you damn your family to save the world? Because if Niobe can stay alive in the Untamed, she might grow up to become our world's Luke Skywalker.
Yes.
My goodness, if I was a studio exec with my big old cigar, I'd say, sounds like Memento meets God of War.
So good.
Well, I tell you, Sebastian has been on the show with us many times as his world has grown, and it's great to see that HBO is looking at option this into a series. I mean, that's how big and powerful the world that you created is, and the talent, and talent. Having the talent is just the price of admission. You know, like you're there, you're doing it, and you know everyone wishes. Everyone looks for like J.R.R. Tolkien, J.K. Rowling, George R.R. Martin. What's the next level of fantasy? And
Sebastian A. Jones, what?
HBO has said it might be this guy.
Yes.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
So, please,
more power to you. More power to you, brother. Absolutely.
We hope you come back. You're always welcome if you've got anything on your mind.
I got to show you guys something. I'm sorry. I do.
Oh, what's this?
I do. Oh my goodness. So, okay.
Bring it, Sebastian.
All right. So now.
Oh wow!
We work with Calamasil. They're the best live-action role-playing sword makers in the world. So the OneRing.net folks, they made Niobe's sword.
Wow.
Okay, this is legit, the real deal. You can actually these runes that read Shemlock Ja Usul Ulk, Soul of Ice in my nerdy language. You can actually use a black light to light these runes up. You can buy this on the website too for any kind of cosplay, if you're a cosplayer or you if you're a LARPer.
Oh wow.
This is amazing. Okay. Niobe's nemesis, her name is Isessa. She is a Vorkassian vampire. And she wants to get her humanity back, but has to deliver Niobe in order to do so, to be back with the lover that she wants to be with. They just, okay, you guys are gonna be some of the first people to see this. They just delivered the Isessa sword.
Whoa!
What?
I was looking up the artwork with that sword in this book.
Oh yes, exactly. The Isessa sword.
Oh, wow.
That's gorgeous, man. That's an insane piece.
So literally, guys, these are made by Calamasil, the best live-action role-playing weapons makers, master craftsmen in the world, and they are creating the Asunda live-action role-playing stuff that I think is movie quality. So, you know, keep your peepers posted. If you want any of this LARP, these LARP weapons, or you want to experience more of my universe, we're not messing about here. Isn't this crazy?
That's amazing. I can't believe you have that much merch and you've got swords.
That is so freaking cool.
Like how does it feel as a creator to see your imagination is being brought to life in this capacity?
Oh, it's nutty. It's really nutty.
It's
to see that arrive. I honestly, I couldn't believe it. It was pretty amazing. You know, and also I grew up live action role playing, so it's very full circle. Yeah, it's you know, I mean, it's an honor. Yeah, there you go. There's the Shemlock.
There it is. I'm telling you guys, the artwork in these books, all of them, is beautiful, spectacular. Not just like, because sometimes you see a graphic novel and the cover is good, but the artwork inside is different.
Yeah, the artwork. My goodness gracious. Okay, so
we can have a whole discussion on
just one quick thing. The artist who paints covers in Sweden for Lord of the Rings, I should have said this at the top, spent nearly 10 years painting The Untamed. Huh. So the guy that paints the covers for Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit in Scandinavia is the guy that spent nearly 10 years painting The Untamed on the interiors. So that story that I was telling you guys, if you guys want to experience our world, this is the level of quality that you get.
I mean, Zoom is not showing the quality. I'm telling you, these books look amazing in person, and they're worth every penny. And you have the opportunity now to discover a new fantasy world and be an Asunda fundamentalist when the TV show comes out.
So great.
Like that bloke's a sellout, you know.
This is amazing. Hey, we're going to have you back for sure in 2021. I think next year is going to be a big year for Tolkien fans, for Asunda fans, for you, for everyone. Merry Christmas to all. I would say we won't see you for a couple weeks, but we will see you because guess what? We have a surprise. Cliff, we are going to be streaming live Christmas Eve with the often requested, finally delivering Christmas Eve. We will be live streaming a live Q&A watch along of Lord of the Rings with Doug Adams, the author of the music of the Lord of the Rings, and his partner Jim J. Ware. This is the unofficial music commentary to Lord of the Rings. Wow. And we begin Christmas Eve, and we will continue on Christmas Day and through the rest of the week. We're gonna do a full deep dive into every note, every little theme, every little composition in Lord of the Rings.
Change an instrument that was there in Howard Shore's vast musical tapestry, taking a deep dive with the author of the music of the Lord of the Rings series, Doug Adams.
And so that we're going to do that Christmas Eve. Since no one's traveling, we're trying to do everything that we can to make being at home without family more enjoyable. So, and we've got some other surprises for Christmas Day. So stay tuned. This has been a great kickoff to Christmas week. The chat room has just been overwhelmingly positive. You've won some big fans here today. So thank you. Should people go to strangercomics.com? Where should they follow you?
Yeah, you can just follow me at Stranger Comics on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, at Stranger Comics. You can send me a DM if you want me to send you the reading order. I'm pretty frequent. I frequent it pretty often. So at Stranger Comics, that's where you find me. StrangerComics.com. And stuff.
And for those that want to get into the HBO world of Asunda, do you have are these available as digital comic PDFs that people can just download and read?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can find all of our comics on Comixology. It's a really good, easy app. So you can just do some quick downloady stuff. They're really reasonably priced on Comixology. If there are collector speculators, we have very rare comics first appearances. I think our hardcovers are a really good bang for the buck if you want that beautiful coffee table edition, book.
Yes, no, seriously, the printed versions are worth every penny because they're just so stunning to read and look at. You'll want to revisit the artwork. Like Cliff has it on his coffee table because it's so good.
It's wonderful.
But if you want to enter the world of Asunda, start with some PDFs. You'll get hooked on the artwork, and then you'll want everything. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This is Torn Tuesday. This is an extra special long episode. It's holiday weekend. We're going to see you Christmas Eve, and we'll see you soon enough, Sebastian, I'm sure. So,
I appreciate you guys very much. Love you guys. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you, Justin, for putting the show together and helping run all the technical side of things. And for your time and for your erudition, thank you, Sebastian. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
To all the folks out there, stay safe, stay at home, relax. We're almost through this, okay? So have a wonderful Christmas. We will be streaming live on Christmas Eve and Christmas Day with Jim J. Ware and Doug Adams, co-authors of the music of the Hobbit series and the music of the Lord of the Rings films. So until then, everybody, take good care, good night, and good luck. Or as I like to say, buenas noches y buena suerte. See you later.
Bye.
Bye, guys.